I enjoy being an also-ran behind Tucker Carlson, who is the champion of being the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Welcome to the Sophie Scholl Monologue. I'm Mel McGinnis. Last week, I talked about Colombia, then and now. Their former president, way back, Revolutionary War, post-Revolutionary War, gave the commencement address to the students and brought out the centrality of Christ in their education, that the education they got was to serve their Creator and country. Also brought out the fact that Colombia now has been so infiltrated by vain and worldly philosophies that it basically repudiates what William Samuel Johnson said back then. Had it in the newspaper, posted it on Facebook. And when I posted it on Facebook, somebody responded by saying, "More extremist hate from Mel. It's sad that he's allowed to pastor." I followed that up and simply asked the question, is that all you got? I was disappointed in my response because it was just a snide remark. So I responded once again and said, "Steve, why the sad face?" It's interesting. He put a sad face, a sad emoji, next to my response when I said, "Is that all you got?" So I said, "Steve, maybe a better response from me should have been by asking what you would suggest to have made that article, that editorial better. Do you have any substantive suggestions?" And he responded. He responded, and this is what he wrote. "Where I would start? Get rid of any mention of critical race theory, anti-Semitism, Molotov cocktail, Marxism, Creator, Soros, and poisoned Ivy League schools. None of this has any bearing on what's going on. You could mention how Israel treated the Palestinians in the past. Better yet, you should not just comment, as you really don't know what's going on. You seem only to hear about it from extreme right-wing media sources." Boy, a lot of words there to respond to. Isn't it interesting how he dismisses the cultural Marxism that's in education now? Dismisses anti-Semitism, which is there. It's not merely anti-Israel, and I do think there's a distinction. But the anti-Semitism, the Jew hatred, is present. Think about his response. Don't mention anything about the Creator. Well, that's what William Samuel Johnson did in his address to those students in Colombia when they graduated right after the Revolutionary War, saying their education was to make them better servants of the Creator and of their country. And Steve mentioned, don't say anything about George Soros. You can't help but notice how funding comes from a source like him for these rent-a-mobs that show up on campus, creating mayhem, blocking Jewish professors and students from getting where they need to be, leaving the grounds where they've been squatting a mess and piles of trash have to be collected. Why should we not mention that? Again, he said, you mentioned how Israel has treated, you haven't mentioned how Israel's treated the Palestinians in the past. Yeah, right, I didn't mention anything. Has there been grievances for the Palestinians? I would say yes. maybe what Israel has done has created issues that are legitimate grievances. But what has been happening with Hamas lobbing rockets over onto those settlements in Israel is inexcusable. What happened on October 7th is inexcusable. Israel has to do something. And I would also add, there really is no two-state solution. We keep hearing that. We got to have a two-state solution. There's not one. Because Hamas wants Israel and literally the Jews destroyed. There's no two-state solution. My solution would be get those Arabs that are Palestinians out of the region and into a country like Egypt, into a country like Jordan, into a country like Syria. There's plenty of Arab territory all around for them to go to. Oh, Saudi Arabia would be another one. The Palestinians are not a people group. It's a social construct. You seem only to hear about it from right-wing opinion shows. No, it's in my study of Scripture. It's in my study of the Quran, where I derive my ultimate opinions. It's not based on opinion shows. So here he wrote what he did, and I responded back. How do you know what you mentioned, like CRT, Marxism, and poisoned Ivy League schools, has no bearing on what is happening today? How do you know that, Steve? I haven't received a response back yet. I find that sometimes it's very difficult for people to really get underneath what's going on the surface and talk about it from a philosophical, ideological, biblical point of view. Because that's where we get into matters of the spiritual, matters of the historical, matters of the philosophical that cannot be ignored. We're watching what is playing out come forth from this perspective of a professor, the faculty at these institutions precipitating this kind of behavior stemming from a philosophy of cultural Marxism, critical race theory, which have set off an ideological Molotov cocktail throughout universities and colleges here in our land. Have you noticed nothing like this is happening at Hillsdale College? Why? Because they are steeped in a worldview, a philosophy that's grounded in the Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, the framers of our country. They're rooted in a philosophy that goes back to the Bible. There's a theological component that can't be ignored. And once you stray from those things, you're going to see things like we're witnessing right now, such as guillotine, off with their heads. I believe that comes out of George Washington University. That sounds like the French Revolution, not the American Revolution. All goes back to what kind of ideology is being pumped into the minds of the young in these universities. Oh, I forgot it! But pretend I have what I'm symbolizing in my hand. Unlike Tony Kornheiser, who waves a Canadian flag, I will wave the sackcloth flag of humility. Well, I'll see you next time on Sophie Scholl Monologue.